Hey guys, coming to you here live from the other side of the world, recording this video because ever since the weapon stat nerf, I feel like people have been very confused on the exact impact that this stat is going to have on certain weapon archetypes. So I just took it upon myself to see the possible TTK shifts that I think people really need to look out for, and then also some underliers as a result of the nerf, with things like 390 pulses being unable to 2-burst normally with just the weapon stat. So, some important disclaimers. This list will mainly be focusing on TTK shifts that happen without any kill perk buildup, or on shifts that happen with very minimal requirement, so no extra buffs needed, no multi-kills, etc. The goal of this list is to give highly lethal options that require minimal interaction, or that are flat out boosted to relevancy because of the weapon stat, and I will make a more niche video on perk-to-perk interaction with the weapon stat in the future, though those will require either more setup, multi-kills, or a dedicated and niche build, etc, etc. But without further ado though, let's go! Section 1, weapon stat required meta contenders that are non-exotic. First one, of course, as you guys have probably been seeing, is 180 hand cannons with PI. The main takeaway to have with this, with the weapon stat nerf, is that now instead of needing like a 140, 150 base for PI to 3-tap to get that 0.67 TTK, it's now actually going to require 177 weapon stat to 3-tap with a 180 hand cannon, but as long as you reach that threshold, you will be 3-tapping in 0.67. Adaptive frame pulses with elemental honing. So currently, it's actually impossible for adaptive frames normally to 2 burst and get that 0.6 that they were hitting before the weapon stat nerf. You need a 5.2% buff, which is just impossible with the weapon stat. But for whatever reason, Bungie decided to make a strand pulse rifle this season with elemental honing, which is a 2.5% buff on first proc, which it gets just for tagging a single shot. So with this 2.5% extra that we get on the last 5 shots of our burst, and a 3.1% damage buff using the weapon stat, which equates to around 162 weapon stat, you will be able to 6 crit again with adaptive frame pulses. So this has gone nowhere. It just means you can't use bygones. You have to use this specific pulse rifle. So we're pretty much right where we left off, just because of the perks that Bungie decided to put on this new pulse, which is great, wonderful. 150 scouts with Adagio Sublimation, the Arc one, new Arc 150 RPM scout. Cammy recently made a video on this talking about it, and I wanted to know specifically what the threshold for the weapon stat needed to be in order to start 2-tapping, and it is 196. And so yeah, with 196 weapon stat and Adagio, which is the 30% buff on scouts, you are tagging for 115 exact, which is a 2-tap in 0.48 seconds. It's actually kind of mind-boggling. It feels like pre-nerf DNT when that used to be able to 2-tap. And it's good. It's really strong. I know that 196 is a large stat investment, but the farming chains that you're able to go on with this is just absolutely insane. You've got energy high impact pulses, which the only one that this combo can roll with is Relentless, with elemental honing. So high impacts, they suck right now. It's a 0.67 within 36 meters, and they have absolutely no range forgiveness. But with elemental honing times 1, 2.5% buff on Relentless, plus the max weapon stat, which is 200, they get a 7.6 passive damage buff, which is a 5 crit, 1 body at 0.67 in range. So you're adding a bit of forgiveness, but what this mainly does is this allows high impact pulses to 6 crit within 41 meters, which is huge. It brings back their range, it allows them to function pretty much how they used to pre-nerf. So if you really did enjoy running high impact pulses, then running really high weapon stat could be very beneficial for you, and it'll definitely bring back the feel that they used to have. But elemental honing as well, we need to talk about this perk. This perk is very quickly going to become a problem if it starts being featured on more weapons, energy weapons namely, because it's free damage. You do any type of damage from any type of elemental source, and you're just building up stacks. And each stack, when enhanced, lasts 24 seconds total. So just by using your kit, as long as you have even 2 different instances of damage, say from the elemental weapon itself, which in this case would be Strand, and then let's say your subclass, let's say you're running a solar subclass, that's another way to get to the next stack, you pretty much have an easy 2.5 to 10% damage buff to upkeep that lasts roughly around 48 seconds. And it's very easy to keep those stacks going, especially if you're on Prismatic and get it upwards of times 4, times 5, which dips into 30 to 35% extra damage. This perk is very quickly going to become a problem. And I really hope that Bungie does address it inevitably, because if they keep adding it to more guns like they've been, for example with the adapter frame pulse rifles, we're going to see some very, very dumb builds. But hey, I mean, I'm happy to cover them. I also really like Relentless because it has crossing over, more stats on the top end, more damage on the bottom end, which also helps with forgiveness in range. It also has Slice, which in my opinion, especially in this sandbox with how high damage everything is probably the best dueling perk in the game. So highly recommend, if you have a Slice Elemental Honing Relentless, pull it out. It's amazing. Okay, so Solar 120s and 140s with kill perks. As you guys know, Flint Striker is currently in the artifact. That allows 3 crits from a hand cannon to proc Radiant, which is a kill off of the 3 crits. With Radiant and Golden Tricorn, you are able to 2-tap with your Igneous Hammer. What some people don't know is that you actually do need a little bit of investment in the weapon stat. It's around 110. And so investing into 110 will allow you to 2-tap in 0.5 seconds, which is great. That's extremely lethal. You're probably seeing it everywhere right now, especially in Trials. One important thing to note, though, is that Solar 140s with Kill Clip or Mag Howl plus the Radiant, which you are getting from Flint Striker, it's the same requirements as Igneous, and a 4.8% damage buff, which is 196 weapon stat, is able to 2-tap faster at a 0.4 TTK. I feel like if you're going for clip farming and you're in something like 6s, a Kill Clip Luna's Howl with 196 weapon stat, and obviously the Radiant from Flint Striker, you can get some very good clips going, especially with Slide Shot Kill Clip on Luna's Howl. I had a lot of fun with it in the couple days I was able to try it out. I think it is definitely worth running if you can invest into it, and yeah, I highly recommend. Of course, you've got your 2-burst hand cannons with Precision Instrument. They will not 2-burst base. You do need minimal, investment into the weapon stat with 122, but this does drop them to a 4 crit at 0.53, which is absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure at 200 weapon stat, you are able to hit a body shot. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure on that. But regardless, though 2 bursts are hard to use, because you're basically required to hit double the crits as you would a normal hand cannon. You essentially have to control recoil. A 0.53 is a 0.53. This is last word TTK. So I honestly believe that 2 bursts do have a niche, specifically a Gape though, since it's the only one that can actually roll Precision Instrument. We've got target lock high impact autos. Up till now, even with the recent crit buff to them, you actually haven't been able to secure it's a 5 crit kill in 0.67, even with enhanced target lock. But with a 4% buff, which is 180 weapon stat, you are killing in 5 crits at 0.67, which is pretty lightning fast for an auto rifle. This basically brings these back to, if you remember, when the Prophecy came out, Prophecy Dungeon re-released its weapons. It re-released the auto with target lock. That was killing in 0.67, and its damage got nerfed, so it couldn't do that with target lock anymore. So essentially, with the weapon stat, we've just brought back that we've unnerfed the nerf that came to these auto rifles. So if you do want to essentially experience peak auto rifle gameplay that we had pretty much a year ago at this point, this will do it. 180 weapon stat, 0.67 TTK. It's really good. I mean, autos feel really nice this season, I will say. They feel really, really good, especially 720s. But if you do want to make high impacts work and you don't want to have a kill requirement with something like Kill Clip or Sword Logic or even Swashbuckler, then I highly recommend you just go target lock 180 weapon stat and just call it a day. So again, Elemental Honing is on another weapon that I don't think it belongs on. We've got it on a Trace Rifle. It was on last season's Trace Rifle, Unsworn. Normally, Trace Rifles kill in 0.73 in 12 crits, but with Elemental Honing factored in and a net 2.8% damage buff, which is 156 weapon stat minimum, you are able to secure an 11 crit 0.67, which you don't think you'd feel that, but you really do feel it from gunfight to gunfight. One less bullet also just means more ammo to, go from target to target. More damage also is just more forgiveness on a weapon archetype that is already quite forgiving in its crit to body shot ratio. I think Traces are really strong this season. I've discovered how to essentially give a Trace Rifle primary levels of ammo and never run out of ammo, and I'm very afraid to share that, but I will be sharing that probably within the next week or two, so stay tuned for that because it's just absolutely obnoxious. So Precision Frame SMGs with target lock, the main thing to note is that target lock got nerfed, and then it got buffed again, but precision frame SMGs never really got their TTK back when it came to enhanced target lock. They were always still stuck at that 0.8 on the higher resiliences, but with minimal investment into the weapon stat at 142, you are able to bring them back to their pre-nerf target lock state at 0.7 second TTK, as long as you're running 142. It's an 8 crit kill. They feel really good. I like SMGs. I think in the current meta, they don't quite work because of how much range and how fast weapons are killing. But I still do think it's very lethal, and it's just it's in an unfortunate spot because of the meta it finds itself surrounded in. But in general, though, very strong weapon regardless. Section 2, these are weapon stat benefiting exotic contenders. Now, you're going to notice with a lot of these, they may not necessarily be TTK shifts, but by all means, lethal nonetheless, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So, we've got Thorn. Max weapon stat is a 5% buff, as you know. It brings our damage up to 83.84. We've got the Thorn damage with a Remnant that burns for 4 ticks of 7. It should be 4 times 7 with the Remnant up. And doing the math, all that damage together, you're hitting 224 total if you're hitting 2 headshots, which is almost a 2-tap, and though it's not a direct 2-tap, you aren't getting that 0.43 time to kill that you would with a 142 tap. Doing 224 damage to a Guardian in 2 headshots, especially with damage over time where they're essentially not allowed to heal, it is absolutely insane. With Remnant up, it will 1 crit 2 body all Guardians, which is also absolutely insane. This weapon has essentially become the most consistent and easy to use 140 in the game. Like, you can pretty much burger out your entire magazine and you still will kill people, so I thought it was very important to mention that. And because it's nearing a 2-tap with the Remnant, a single surge is enough to tip it over to 2-tap. You need a very minimal buff. That 3% buff from 1 surge is enough to 2-tap. And then without Remnant will at least be a 2 crit 1 body base. So without the Remnant damage buff, without any surges, this weapon does move to a 2 crit 1 body base as long as you have max investment into the weapon stat. So I think Thorn is great. I think this pushes it into nearing S tier because I think it's like high A, and the only thing that really holds it back is its range. But being able to 2 crit 1 body at base, being able to 1 crit 2 body after you get a Remnant, minimal surge investment allowing it to 2 crit flat out, 2 headshots dealing almost all of a Guardian's HP, like this weapon's just absolutely insane this season. Red Death Reformed, it follows along the same lines as Relentless in the sense that if you do have high weapon stat investment, that along with its perk, its exotic perk granting escalating damage from 1 to 5% as your shields get lower, it does allow it to 5 crit 1 body as well pretty consistently with an optimal range, which is roughly 36 meters, but it actually pushes Red Death out to 44 meters of effective range with 6 crits still killing. I think this weapon's great. I can't use it personally because of the low handling, but I think with the weapon stat being introduced, it brings this weapon back into the limelight as an actual contender again, because for the longest time, high impact pulses have just been completely useless since the range nerf, so this definitely does bring it back up a bit. We've got Sunshot. Now, I know with Graviton Spike, honestly, like, this isn't really one to consider too much because Graviton Spike is just a far superior 150, but if you are a sadist and you felt like using this thing, just know that bumping your weapon stat up to 184 will bring Sunshot to 140 RPM damage values. So you'll essentially have a 140 RPM hand cannon shooting at 150, still dealing the same damage. I like Sunshot personally. I actually really like how it feels, especially in the air. It's not for everyone, but if you feel like using it, I mean, it's an option. Le Monarch, I bring this up because I remember there used to be a meta where people would essentially just lane in the back and double body with Le Monarch, and this kind of brings it back. Being at 200 weapon stat buffs the body shot damage to 89.25, and with the poison tick damage, it actually does bring the total damage per body shot to 113.25, so you're doing roughly like almost 127 damage. So being able to do 227 damage total with 2 body shots, I mean, you so much as breathe on the person and they just fall over and die. So Le Monarch laning is pretty much back if you're at max weapon stat investment, especially like teaming wise. You hit someone with that damage, they're poisoned, they've just lost half of their health, I mean, what do they do? It's very, very strong for laning with your team. Honorable mention though, explosive payload hand cannons. They only require a 2% buff to be buffed to their pre-nerf damage before EP got nerfed. That happened around 2 years ago. It will buff them to the 140 RPM damage frame with 140 weapon stat, which is kind of funny. I find it funny that those correlate. And I really do feel like it makes EP relevant again. I know a lot of PvP players have definitely been missing this perk and have missed being able to run this perk on their rows. So if you do feel like that damage nerf has made a huge difference, run 140 weapon stat and it should be fixed. And I mean, yeah, that kind of completes the list. I mean, there's nothing else that I could personally think of going through all of DT Foundry that does drastically get impacted by the weapon stat with very minimal investment, whether within a gunfight or with the stat itself. If you have any suggestions or anything you've used that you feel the weapon stat has impacted, I'd love to see it in the comments. I have more videos revolving around the weapon stat itself and some perks and builds that greatly benefit from it coming out soon. But aside from that, I hope you guys enjoyed the list. I hope it was helpful. I'll actually have a link to this Google Slides in the description, so if you do want to access it and look at the hard numbers, feel free to. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys very, very soon. Later.